Motion is carried. My name's Teresa, and I'm a grateful believer and an addict and alcoholic in recovery. And I'm very glad to be here, and I'm glad to see everybody.
Hi, Teresa.
Hi. And tonight, I'm going to talk about everybody's favorite topic.
Diarrhea.
Although, I was going to say, there's a lot of symptoms that come with worry. Worry is the topic. And worry it's just part of our human condition. The idea that our brain goes a little squirrely and decides to worry about either problems or potential problems. A lot of times, what we worry about is not even a problem. We literally imagine a problem. So, well done, brain. Like, I feel like if I get to use my creativity and imagination that God has gifted me with, why would I use it to make up problems that have not even occurred? But, you know, I see a letter on the table that I don't have time to pick up and read, and it has a government return address. The next 2 hours, I'm headed to jail, man. Or something really bad is happening. And I can imagine every worst case scenario. And I don't really have great insight about why I do that. You know, fear and the fact that I come out of my state of trusting God and in God's goodness and all the goodness He has for me. But why do I flip out of that so quickly with like the dumbest little triggers in life? But we all do it. And if you think you don't do it, you're probably in denial about it. And that's okay. That's cool. Just, it's something that we don't want to be in denial about. It's a waste of time, and it takes away so much from us. So I always have this little talk that I do on worry, but I'm gonna steal some stuff from Louis Giglio's book, The War on Worry, or Winning the War on Worry, and I just did this with a sponsee, and I really enjoyed it. So, so I have had a few pages highlighted that I want to add to the talk, because he's such a smart guy, and he just puts things in such a understandable, relatable way. So, but I'm going to start with my regular little thing about worry. So the meaning of the word is, it is a thought process causing anxiety about actual or potential problems. So that is how we think of worry. It's a thought process. It causes anxiety. It is not the feeling of anxiety. Some of us literally suffer from a anxiety that comes on. Some of us suffer from a clinical condition of, you know, generalized anxiety. Now that's different. That's a physiological feeling. Worry is not what goes on in our nervous system from the neck down. Worry is what goes on between our ears. It's what we're thinking. It's our thought processes. So we actually can be having a very contented, peaceful day. We can start worrying and cause anxiety. And that's often kind of the loop that we get into. And then we're fearful, and then we worry more, and then, you know, and then all bets are off. Nobody knows what's going to happen then. The other use of the word worry that I always like to think about is the old use of the word was to worry a knot, to worry a strand of string. And there used to be people who used to do this for a living, like in wartime. They had to unknit sweaters. so they could reuse the yarn to make now, new smaller size sweater. So when you have a knot that you can't get undone, you are worrying it when you are picking at the strands of it. And I like to add that because it's such a good visual for me. That's literally what I'm doing. I'm taking a knot that is none of my business, and I'm picking at it with my thought processes. I'm gonna fix it, I'm gonna loosen it, I'm gonna move this over there, let's try this, let's try that, when God has told me again and again to leave it alone. So that's another use of that word. So Psychology Today, this is actually in my talk, and it's in Giglio's book as well, talks about studies that are done on the general population. And actually his study, I think, was done on believers, but I'm not going to look it up. But anyway, I don't think there's a big difference. The study shows that we have 3 to 4 worry topics a day. So our brain every day touches on 3 to 4 topics average. People that worry a lot can, they can touch on lots and lots of different topics. And so they studied these people and they asked them to write down, what they worried about and how that went for them and what they were thinking about and their thought processes. And the big thing about it is that they worried a lot. They spent a lot of time in worry, and that 91% of the things they worried about were false alarms. They were things that when you followed it through over time, nothing came to fruition. The letter from the government was nothing. And, it was a renewal for my car tags, and which always panics me until I open it. So the moral of this is 91% of what we worry about, there's a good chance that it is completely a waste of time and a waste of thought. So that's a number to keep in mind. That's a really high number. So the other thing I always like to include in this talk is just the detrimental effects of worry. Worry leads to stress in our body, and it leads to health effects. And it's well documented that people that report that they are stressed, and then if you kind of go backwards about, they're really stressed about how they're thinking about their circumstances rather than their circumstances. It's how they're worrying about them. They have higher blood pressure. They have higher incidences of heart disease. They have digestive issues, which could include diarrhea. Thank you, Dave. And they have weight changes, either increase or decrease. It can even lead to memory impairment, and that's because we're spending so much time, in our brain just with all this nonsense and useless thought processes that we're having a hard time tracking what we really need to keep track of. Definitely insomnia. So there's all kinds of really negative effects that worry has on our bodies. But here's some other bigger effects. A, it's a waste of time. So we're taking time away from the time that we could be spending glorifying God with our thoughts, our words, our demeanor, our stance, our posture. We're taking time away from learning more about how to be in close relationship with Jesus. We're taking time away from that pausing in peace to acknowledge the presence of God right here with us. We cannot be worrying and acknowledging the presence of God at the same time. It's quite impossible. I've tried it. So, here's another big one. Worry itself is full of deceit. It can be deceit that we're telling ourselves there are false beliefs that we have, but then the enemy can piggyback on that deceit and really drill down into our thought processes, and we can get really skewed thoughts. And I really like how Giglio lays out the 4 lies of worry. Lie number 1, something really bad is going to happen, period. We're just going to leave that at that. Lie number 2, the more you worry about it, the better your odds of avoiding it. That's a lie. Lie number 3, I have no choice. I'm a born worrier. And I actually have heard this quite a few times from people. You know, it's just how I am. It's just how I am. I just worry a lot. Like it's not something to address. It's not something to work on. But it really, and it's kind of sad because, you know, I'm not going to be somebody that's arguing with somebody who's convinced of that. But Jesus tells us not to worry. He pointedly tells us not to worry more than once. I kind of wonder, as he walked the earth and he lived with us and he got to know us and our human condition, if that was one of the more puzzling things about humans, was how much humans worried. Because he mentioned it to his disciples, and these are his close group of people. He mentioned it to them several times. Like, why are you worrying? Like, this doesn't even make any sense. So it's one of the things that Jesus is very specific about. We're not supposed to do that. So it's not something that's going to go away overnight, but it is something that we should pay attention to and we should address. And we should never say, it's like saying, I was born a sinner. Yes, I was. But that doesn't mean that that's something that I want to embrace. We don't want to embrace being a worrier. And lie number 4, I can control the outcome by worrying. Nope. Bad news. Nope. So I'm just going to leave those at that. We're going to come back to that as we think about what to do about worrying. Just kind of tuck those away, because one of the things that we want to look at is what is the big lie that we're believing. Usually we're embracing one of those more than the rest, and as I worry knots, you know, in my head with problems, I am telling myself that I can affect the outcome, and I am lying to myself. So that's the lie. And as I address worry in my thought processes, I want to know that that's my thinking error, that I'm thinking that I can make things better. It undermines our trust in God. Every minute that I'm believing that lie, I am saying that I'm not, where's my trust in God? Where's my trust that He has the outcome? That His goodness is driving the outcome, that He is all powerful and the creator of the universe. So if I'm believing this lie over here, then it is taking away and undermining my development of a deeper trust in God. It elevates self, worry does. The more time we spend worrying, the more we are boosting ourself, either through those lies and deceptions or just through our idea of, well, this is what I want. I don't want this bad thing to happen. I want. And that is self. We're no longer surrendering to God's will and saying, God, what do you want? God, I'm looking for your will in this. And it steals our joy. Our greatest testament of what God does in our lives is our joy, the joy that we have as we sit in God's mercy and His grace. We get to tell people that we're set apart as Christians, that we are God's children as Christians. And the way we show that is with our joyful living, our joyful talking, our joyful worship, our joyful fellowship. But if I'm spending all this time worrying, it is stealing that away. So one other thing I always include in my talk is a lot of people have a hard time, including me, have a hard time telling the difference between planning and being a planner and an organizer and worrying. And so I always like to just throw in there that they are two different things. Worrying is, there's nothing concrete about it. It is a thought process. We're not doing anything. When I'm planning, I'm making a list. So there's three elements that go with planning that are not included in worrying. One is that there's concrete steps. I am planning my next outing. I'm writing the date. They're concrete steps. I'm doing X, Y, and Z. That's a plan. It's solution focused. I have, there is an endpoint. And there's a solution that I am working towards. I have a whole bunch of wood in my yard from all the trees that came down. So the solution is that it needs to be stacked. So my plan is that I get the wheelbarrow out and I go out there and I discover that I don't have the right gloves and I need this and I need that. So another part of my plan is to go and find those things. So the solution then, after a series of planning and the steps, is that the wood is stacked. And the most important part of planning is it's directed by God. When we have a plan, when we decide, even if I'm stacking wood, that I pray about this, I talk to God about it, I hear from God about it, and I definitely had a little chat with God about the pieces that were really big. So he and I are still talking about that. But anyway, that is the difference. There's no element in there, or worrying does not include any of those elements. Worrying is simply a circular process. So when we're talking about how to address it, first we want to notice it. We want to notice how much are we worrying. And a good time to think about, or a good time to track this, if you're interested in spending less time with worry, is to just for a second, just track some thoughts that you have while your brain is not like fully engaged in doing something else. Sometimes I find myself worrying when my brain is not fully engaged, like I'm in the shower or I'm out on a walk or even driving. I know my brain should be fully engaged, but it's not. Do not tell my insurance company. But you know what I mean. When we're not talking with somebody, we're not writing something out. When our minds are empty, seem empty, that is really fruitful ground for worrying. And if we're finding ourselves all of a sudden, having weird conversations in our head with people that we need to, I'm really worried about this conversation, so I'm going to think about it ahead of time, and I'm going to think about how it's going to go, and this is probably going to be their reaction, and then this is what I'm going to say, and then they're going to say. So if you're finding yourself doing that, then that's a good place to start with tracking how much you're worrying and what it is you're worrying about. And that's another good place to start challenging yourself about, so what is the lie that I'm believing of the 4 lies of worrying? What is it that I'm engaging here? If you worry a lot, kind of constantly, that you might be engaging in the one that says, I'm a born worrier, and you've kind of just let yourself have free reign with that. So tracking your worry is a way to start a plan, to start addressing your worry. The big issue with worrying, and if we want to address it, is we have to trust in God's faithfulness. And, that's easy. Just trust in God's faithfulness. Okay, I'm done. If that were easy, if that were something that we could just, we're just drawn to do right away, then we would be doing it. But there's something about our self-will that we want to solve these problems. So we have to put that down and we have to consciously decide to trust in God's faithfulness. And doing book studies like this one, or similar ones, there's a lot of them out there about how to get our brain to refocus on surrendering to God's plan, surrendering to God's will and God's goodness. He is working all of this out. He has the big picture here. And us worrying about it is simply, like we've already said, a waste of time. So in Giglio's book, I love where he says, we counter worry by abiding. We abide in Jesus. And to abide simply means to stay. It means to stay and not to move. And what does it mean to abide? To remain, to dwell, to stay in a constant posture of surrender and dependency, not on your own strength and your own power, but on the character and nature of God. And we do this by practicing our spiritual practices. So we cannot simply respond to worry. We have to be on the offensive. We have to plant all of the good seeds in our mind and in our heart so that we don't have an empty mind that is just waiting for worry to crop up. So the one verse that I really loved, Paul said it this way: don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank him for all he has done. So there's a great prescription for the activities that we can take that are the offensive, that we're not waiting to worry. When we are in that contented, peaceful phase, and then all of a sudden our brain is going off, Paul is saying, no, we need to pray. We need to pray about everything. If something were to pop up in my head that I think I need to worry about, this is where I talk to God about it and I hear from God about it. Tell God what you need and thank him for all that he has done. So gratitude is another part of this. When our hearts and minds are full of gratitude, when we are grateful for all that God has done for us, all of the blessings that we have, it is very hard to get off on a tangent of worrying about the letters sitting on my table that came from the government. So, in fact, there's a really good chance that my brain is going to say, because God is going to tell me, all is well. I'm going to take care of you. Then my brain is going to say, I don't really care what's in that envelope. We're not fortune tellers. We don't know, but that's the whole point. We always decide it's bad. So what if we said, I don't really care what's in that envelope, because God is going to take care of me. And and I don't even know where it is in the book, but one of my favorite lines in this book is where he says, one of our favorite tangents that our brain goes off on when we're worrying is the what if game. What if, what if, what if, what if. And that's where we're even making up things, you know. And I love that he says, because I can do that. I can do that with the best of them. And he says to change that to even if. And it's such a powerful change in words. And to me, I was like, what? And I've tried it. And it makes a huge difference. Your brain goes a little crazy when you start saying, what if? Mm-hmm. What if tomorrow? What if next week? What if? But when you change it to even if, it is an invitation. The what if is an invitation to go off the cliff. And even is an invitation to say, I trust you, God, even if the worst happens. Okay, I know God's got me. Okay. And our imagination still can go crazy. You all know that I worry about my daughter who's incarcerated, and I've worried about her for so long. And I've actually read this book a few times, and I've heard this a few times. And at some point, I was able to say, even if she were to go to prison, because we don't say that about our children. Because for a long time, I said, what if? What if she never sees her son again? What if she goes to prison? What if she dies? What if she can't get off drugs? What if she never is able to be of her right mind again? And that was all those things could happen. But it was stealing my joy, and it was making it really hard for me to be in relationship with her. And when I started using this technique of even if she goes to prison, God holds me, God holds her, God holds her child. All is well, because all is in his, everything is in his hands. He has a plan. He has a way forward. Do I like it? No. I can hold both those things at the same time, though. And I don't have to go through this with the fear and the what ifs, because those can go on forever. Because you know what? Bad things happen in prison too. So I could just keep going with that. But no, even if. So it is a huge difference. If you think about something that you have found yourself saying, what if? But what if? And you try changing that to even if. See how that feels. It's very subtle, but it's very powerful. Okay, and then, I'm out of time. So the last few things here are, and all of this is the second part of our plan. We're tracking our worry, we're trusting in God's faithfulness. So that whole talk was the trust in God's faithfulness. So that's how important that is. That's really the important part. That is the solution to worry, is trusting God. If you're still really struggling and you're really wanting to work on this, confess your worries to God. Talk to him about them. Sometimes we start worrying and then we feel embarrassed or ashamed, so we go to God in prayer, but we're not really praying about the fact that we can't stop worrying. God knows that. You think it's a secret? I do that all the time. I'm like, oh yeah, you already knew, that's right. He knows us. He loves us. He wants to meet us right there. So talk to him about what's wrong with my brain. Have mercy on me. I am a sinner. I am a worrier. And I surrender this. And he will meet you right there. Ask for his peace. Fill your minds. There's worship music, prayer, gratitude. Make a list of how God has been faithful to you. It will remind you over and over and over again that the even if is true. Use your fellowship. Encouragement combats worry, and real encouragement is what you need to turn your focus back to God's faithfulness. The best cure for a worried heart is abiding in Christ and ultimately resting in his promises. John 10:28, and I give them eternal life, and they will never, ever perish, and no one will ever snatch them out of my hands. Yes.
Amen. Thanks, Teresa. That was really good.